the Honorable Member Ms. Natasha Singh-Lewis to make her presentation. Doctor, accreditations.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the speaker before us carried on as somebody who has a lot of years in this political arena. I expected a different presentation. For a seasoned politician, the presentation from last year to this year was really unbecoming of somebody with that amount of experience. The speaker before me, Dr. Frank Anthony, took time to tell the nation that the APNU AFC government took 50 days to get drugs through the procurement system to the health centers. But, sir, not so long ago, at a community outreach, we heard a medical professional bore her soul out to her commander in chief. For me, it wasn't just she didn't have drugs and she had to take her own money to buy stuff for the children and their parents in her community. It was the facility in which they work. They spoke about the washroom, they had to fetch water. And Mr. Speaker, I listened to that video a few times. It represents today the state of affairs that our public servants work in. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Frank Anthony spoke at length about the APNU AFC deliverables from 2015 to 2020. What he did not tell us was the period of 23 years in which we saw the Georgetown Public Hospital diminish from 600 and odd beds to 300 and something beds. They never got it right. But come here to lecture us. But I will let that mental outburst go for now. I don't think Dr. Byro Harry will make any sense with Frank, the honorable member, but I urge him as a colleague that outburst should be attended to. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak for the voiceless, children who cry in silence, for the women who live in fear, and for the elderly who await in despair, hoping for a better life before they die. I rise to add my voice in holding this government accountable for its atrocious failure to protect the most vulnerable among us, despite receiving trillions of dollars in budgetary allocation since 2020. The PPP government has failed the people of Guyana year after year while enriching themselves. Mr. Speaker, I want to share an experience with you because you see, us on the other side, we don't have luxury offices, so we go out into the regions. I was in Port Kaituma, and I was talking with some fathers in the afternoon after we would have had our outreach. That the people Should I continue, sir? Okay. Where is the Prime Minister? Prime Minister said we will.
We are a peaceful people. Struggle is with struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake. Cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice bread, not one caress, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo. Take time on it, though we may criticize it. This is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. We are a peaceful people. Struggle is with struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places. Talk about taking over. We ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one karage, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one rice, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo. Take time on it, though we may criticize it. This is our home, we love it, and we mean to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one karage, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one karage, not a blade of grass. We are a peaceful people. Struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one karage.
You restart at 7:52, Honorable MP. So that's 8 minutes went by. And I will give you the signal when your time is up.
Thank you, Mr.
You
Speaker.
may start at 8:53. Sorry,
Miss-
7:53.
Mr. Speaker, I was making the point before the blackout, and I got a little bit distracted because I was looking in the blackout for the Prime Minister, because he said that we will never have blackout again, and that the opposition members of Parliament are being untruthful in the National Assembly. And as God would have it, in the National Assembly, we got blackout and was disturbed. But he's not here, he's not here. He's missing in action. Not for a moment would I ever do that. But Mr. Speaker, I was making the point that the PPP government has failed the people of Guyana year after year while enriching themselves. And I wanted to share the experience of when I was in Port Kaitumo early in 2024. And after the consultation, the community meeting, three fathers came up to me and they were discussing what's happening with them personally. Mr. Speaker, it broke my heart when one gentleman said to me, Ms. Lewis, we can only afford one meal per day, and we prefer to give the children dinner so they don't go to bed hungry. That is our state of poverty in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this budget reflects a failure of good governance, and it prioritizes political survival over national well-being. It entrenches poverty, stifles growth, and risks destabilizing our society because our poor and working class are treated less than humans. Mr. Speaker, when I look at this budget, I'm thinking, this is not a fiscal policy. It is a clear case of a class warfare, a systematic betrayal of the poor to enrich the elites. Sir, after listening to Dr. Singh's presentation on January 17th, 2025, and reading the measures this government intends to implement to improve social services of this country, I was prompted to look at the performance of the sector. And I will tell the Guyanese people now how incompetent this government is as it relates to the implementation of the budgetary allocations for the Ministry of Human Services. Sir, last year, I didn't focus heavily on the performance of the sector. I gave a broader view of the budget itself. But this year, I felt like I should look more in depth in the sector. And last year, after my presentation, I was accosted outside on the corridors by Dr. Vindhya Prasad, the Minister of Social Services. And in her exact words, she said to me, "Are you proud of yourself now?" In a very degrading manner. I felt threatened. And I didn't answer confirming what she said. But I want to say to Dr. Vindhya Prasad that in the presence of the same two persons, I'll tell you today, I'm damn proud of myself. Let's look at what's happening with the first agency, the Child Protection in Guyana. Sir, the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security has been handed a golden mandate and a golden budget. In fact, several good budgets in the last 4 years to safeguard our people. Yet very often, this House hears reports of thousands of child abuse cases. More specifically, in 2024, sir, 4,032 cases of child abuse were reported, including unspeakable acts of sexual violence against our children. Mr. Speaker, can you imagine the situation of our children in this country with the largest budget ever, trillions of dollars, and our children on a large scale are being abused? How many of these children receive psychosocial support? Where are the national education campaigns to educate children and their parents on these crimes? Mr. Speaker, we on this side of the House recognize that socioeconomic and cultural drivers such as poverty and unemployment have direct correlations between abuse rates and economic hardship. In this case, Ghana has been fighting the high cost of living, and the poor people suffer tremendously. But what are the measures put in place to counter hardship in this country? Sir, this is one of the reasons why the opposition brought a motion to this House to discuss the high cost of living so that our children can be nurtured in a better environment and we would see less cases of abuse reported. Mr. Speaker, the lack of focus on strategy to protect and care for our children in the poverty-stricken homes by this PPP government is a betrayal of our children. Sir, what can the Guyanese people expect? The motion to debate the high cost of living died a natural death. We didn't see it here. And so there were no collaboration with the opposition to put forward strategies on how to combat that high cost of living. Mr. Speaker, the nation's children were denied the opportunity of having a systematic approach to alleviating poverty in Guyana. But as a nation, we will wait the handouts, the Band-Aid solutions, because the PPP is accustomed to addressing problems with Band-Aids and not addressing the causes of the real problems. Sir, our children will continue to suffer, even as the Child Care and Protection Agency was created to protect our children from harm. Sir, under the PPP government's watch, child sexual abuse has become an epidemic that has no strategy to combat same. Mr. Speaker, one might wonder if I didn't read the budget books. Why am I saying this? I did read the budget books to look at the strategies, sir, the strategies set out. But let me share them and show you how incompetent this ministry operates, sir. They will provide rehabilitative services to children who are abused and their parents. Sir, that is a very reactive strategy. They cannot come up with proactive strategies. They will provide emergency care for children who are abused. Again, after the act, very reactive, sir. Mr. Speaker, what are the measures in place to protect our children? What measures are in place to ensure that the parents of these children are not frustrated because they can't provide financially for them? Sir, the social workers will tell you that majority of the 4,032 cases reported are children from homes of abject poverty, and that their success rate of taking care of the children is woeful. Sir, the ministry has confirmed it themselves. The number of children abused are 4,032, and that they were able to return to their families in 1 year, 88. Mr. Speaker, the number of children assessed and placed in alternative care is 217. Sir, what has happened to the 3,815 children? Incompetent, Minister Vindhya Prasad. Incompetence at its best. But I hope when you come up here to speak after me, you will tell us what is happening with those children. Sir, the minister has failed the children, and I will give her an F grade. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you how the Minister and Child Protection Agency are failing this country. And this one is very personal for me. A Muslim teenage girl, sorry I can't disclose her identity, but a social worker has the facts. A child from Region 3 but goes to school in Georgetown was sexually assaulted by a relative since November of 2024. When the matter came to light, because a social worker in her private capacity intervened, it was reported to the CPA, the Child Protection Agency, in Georgetown. To date, the parents are awaiting a response from the director of the Child Protection Agency on how the matter will be addressed. Mr. Speaker, it hurts me personally because I would know better than most of you in here that most of the Muslims in this country voted for a Muslim president since they believe they would be better off today, but the system has failed our people. The PPP has failed our children. Mr. Speaker, one may ask, but why not approach the minister so that she can intervene? It's a serious matter. Sir, I have written to the minister on several issues as recent as last few months, but to date, sir, I have not received as much as an acknowledgement. That is the level of incompetence and arrogance that leads the Ministry of Human Services. Sir, the minister says Dr. Vindya Prasad says, don't be dishonest. Dr. Vindya Prasad, I wrote to you about Mr. Bristol, the senior citizen that was locked away in the house, number 50 Village Quarantine. Not a response till now, but I know you have taken action. You're just arrogant for not responding to the opposition members of parliament. I have written to you on the matter of Miss James, Leona James in Port Kaituma, who lives behind the airport. Not a response, but I know you know of the matter. Sir, let me put a wrap on the protection and care of our children by telling you of the feedback that I have received from 7 out of 10 regions in Guyana in relation to the child abuse issue, sir. The staff at Child Protection Agency said to me, Ms. Natasha, this is what happens when you employ your friends and family who have no idea and experience of the work. Sir, the advice is that the CPA, the Child Protection Agency, is understaffed, underfunded, and overwhelmed. But sir, I'm moving on. Let's take a look at the empowerment of women and girls. We are quite aware of the many cases where women are raped, beaten, and murdered. And today, only today, Bibi Fazi Ali of Annandale, East Coast, Demerara, was murdered after suffering years of abuse at the hands of her husband. We need to do better, sir. After the billions of dollars that this ministry received, sir, it is just disheartening. Mr. Speaker, more needs to be done to protect our women and children from this epidemic of violence in the home. Mr. Speaker, not so long ago, we passed in this House the Family Violence Bill. And I heard somebody talk about the training of the policemen and how competent they are and so on. But sir, we still need to do a lot more. The ministry now has to do its work. But what do we see? Incompetence. The minister, Mr. Speaker, it is important to empower our women to be self-sustaining with the hope of escaping the horror of abuse. I have heard in pretty much the same language the Minister of Human Services say the same thing. Why isn't she doing anything to help us, sir? So what are we doing to empower our women in Guyana? Sir, in the essence of time, I will choose only one program. As I said, I've taken a deeper look into the ministry's operations. One program to give the Guyanese people an idea of how incompetent this Ministry of Human Service and Social Protection is. And that program is the Women Innovation Investment Network program. Mr. Speaker, the Guyana Women's Leadership Institute spent a total of $185.5 million on this program. This sum was for the implementation of the Women's Innovation and Investment Network training program aimed at empowering women and girls. Mr. Speaker, at a minimum, and I am not exaggerating, this program was a disaster. It is a continuing disaster, and it's a failed project. Let me tell you how, because that seems to be a harsh statement, but it is facts. Let me tell you how and why, sir. From the start of the project, the design was flawed. I didn't say that, sir. The first people who said that is the Auditor General in their report. And sir, this year I have taken all of my research from the Parliament Library, so I don't have to hand over everything. It's right there. Mr. Speaker, from the time I saw Minister Vindya Prasad in Region 1, Barometer, talking about the indigenous women will be able to learn a skill, gain employment, and they're doing a sewing program, the duration is 2 to 3 days. I knew that was a sham. But that was me bringing to bear my training and experience in the education sector. And maybe, Mr. Speaker, maybe I was being harsh, but listen to what the Auditor General report showed us. The report said, The design and implementation of the program could not have empowered underprivileged and single-parent women to gain employment or to start a small business to sustain themselves and their families. Why was this, Mr. Speaker? After $185.5 million. Isn't that incompetence, Mr. Speaker? But the minister will have to come here. I hope to God that she tells us what went wrong. This is because, Mr. Speaker, we are not involved in designing. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, this flaw was because key stakeholders were not involved in designing the program and participants were not checked on to receive feedback for critical decision making. So, Mr. Speaker, the bigger issue of consultation and partnering with people to make the policies and strategies better for Guyana is an inherent issue in the PPP. They have not consulted with the opposition on this budget, and they go on in their ministry and in their program. They will not consult with the key stakeholders to get value for money. We're seeing it evident here. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, training received by vulnerable women through the Institute may not be beneficial in allowing them to gain meaningful employment. From the get-go, the WIN program was a failure and continues to be a failure for the Ministry of Human Services. Mr. Speaker, the minister has failed the people, and by extension, the PPP government is a failed leadership for the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, let me give you context. The report said that the staff at the Institute strengthens. Mr. Speaker, the report said that the staff at the Institute strengths were not determined. No provision was made for monitoring and evaluation of personnel on the Institute organization structure, and key positions were not filled. It is clear the ministry is not interested in conducting evaluations and assessment to determine the needs of the Institute. These were necessary for the effective design and implementation of the WIN program. A simple task, Mr. Speaker, to employ people to do the job the ministry could not do. They failed the people of this country. They failed the vulnerable women of this country. Sir, during the period, and that is a 2 years period, 14,603 persons had applied to the program, and 2,571 of them were identified as the most vulnerable, and that group is the unemployed single parent. However, sir, only 410 of these women took part in the program. They actually participated in the program from applications of 14,663. And then reducing that to qualifying 2,571, only 410 women took part in this program. Sir, if we calculate the value per training, we have lost $185.5 million for nothing, sir. Mr. Speaker, as a result, 84% of the most vulnerable women are at risk of being left behind. I did not say that, Mr. Speaker. The Auditor General report says that, and it's there for everyone to see. Where is the Minister of Finance, Dr. Ashley Singh? Dr. Singh, did you know that? As a result of 84% of the most vulnerable women are at risk of being left behind. So when all of you over there come here to talk about how you represent the women and you're doing women's training and all of that, look at what Minister Vendya Prasad is doing at her ministry. 84% of the most vulnerable women are left behind. The Auditor General report says that. Mr. Speaker, the PPP government has failed in its commitment to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, SDG 5, which is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. The Guyana Women's leadership, under the stewardship of Dr. Prasad, did not effectively implement the WIN program. That was evident as there were gaps in the monitoring evaluation process relating to the graduates. Perhaps Dr. Vendya Prasad should tell us whether follow-ups with the graduates to understand their progress and the challenges they face in advancing economically were conducted because the Auditor General of 2023, the Auditor General report of 2023 said the ministry did none of that. Further, the report stated that there was no system in place to raise awareness of possible employment opportunities. Could you imagine that, Mr. Speaker? Even the database used to make informed decisions for the students had duplicate information, and in some cases, incomplete information. Mr. Speaker, the Human Services Minister gets an F grade on this project. Sadly, the taxpayers' money was squandered, $185.5 million. So it is clear that the minister has been hopping around this country only for photo opportunities because the programs are failing tremendously. Mr. Speaker, let me turn my attention to the senior citizens. Every month, our senior citizens, those who built this nation, are forced to stand for hours waiting for their pensions they earn through a lifetime of labor. All of us here would remember how our pensioners were treated badly just the other day. They came out before the sun was up and stood in the rain and then the hot sun not so long ago while they were asked to come out in person to register in Georgetown, where all of us drive around in Georgetown at the NIS office for the $100,000. Mr. Speaker, that was only one case that said publicly that the PPP government has no respect for our elders and they don't care. Mr. Suresh, this is merciless. When we talk about our senior citizens, to have them in that condition, the PPP is merciless. Mr. Speaker, my colleague spoke extensively on the 5,000 increase in old age pension, which compares to nothing in relation to the high cost of living. Sir, while in Region 6 at a community meeting, one resident said they're happy that the government has implemented a system for the pensions to go to the bank, and I was happy. Minister Vindhya Prasad, thank you very much. That was a really good initiative, implementing the banking system for pensioners to receive their pension. But Mr. Speaker, I know the PPP too well. They don't care for our senior citizen. And some sixth sense said to me, investigate this. It's too good to be true. Mr. Speaker, guess what I found? I came across a pension fraud audit dated 2023. And this is what the Honorable Vindhya Prasad and the PPP is really doing. In 2023, a special audit was being conducted into the receipts and distribution of old age pension, the public assistance books, and the tamper evidence holographic labels. We saw the minister make some statements in the media in relation to that whole story when it was discovered. And we'll come back to what she said. But according to the report, the ministry's application form and approving officer signature is required for the pensioner to transition from coupons to bank payments. However, there were 73% of instances where the approving officer's signature was not evident on the applications form for pensioners changing from coupons to bank. Mr. Speaker, I can't use the C word, but this is run-ins, sir. It was run-ins that caused the Auditor General to do the report. Mr. Speaker, the fudgery gets worse and the run-ins gets harder. Listen to Mr. Speaker. The auditors asked for 40 specific files to investigate the old age pension fraud. And this one is sweet. 4 of the 40 files that the ministry supplied to the auditors that were requested were not submitted for audit scrutiny. However, the ministry submitted 4 other files that were not requested. What is that, Mr. Speaker? I can't use the C word, but it's fudgery. It's hard runnings, Mr. Speaker. I am restrained by your good office and I will not use the C word. I don't know what it is if it's not corruption and fraud. What is it, sir? High level of fudgery and hard runnings going on at the Ministry of Human Services. The elderly will not get respect from this government. When you think they're doing something good, look deep into it. It's always about them. Mr. Speaker, the same report says that they have breached some of the store regulations. And sir, for being somebody who spent a number of years in public service, I know when you breach the store regulation what that is all about. It says that the permanent secretary shall ensure that master and sectional inventories are kept and are properly maintained. However, a master inventory nor a sectional inventory was not presented for audit. As a result, it could not be determined whether all the assets of the ministry were properly accounted for by this ministry. What is that, Mr. Speaker? This is the ministry, and this is the history of the PPP, that one minister, Mr. Speaker, the audit report talks about the permanent secretary being accountable as the budget agency responsible. Mr. Speaker, this ministry changed 4 permanent secretary in 1 term. That is a history in the PPP government. Never happened before. Where a ministry, Mr. Speaker, has a main store and a sub-store, we all know that all purchases shall be accounted for from the main store. Mr. Speaker, transfer to the sub-store shall, and the Auditor General went on to give advice on how the store should be run. However, audit checks reveal that the records of the ministry's main store do not include, sir, the main store. It says that the main store should have the inventory, and then you send out to the sub-store. We all know that. The ministry main store do not include Item Center, the Hugo Chavez Center, the Palms Geriatric Home, the Sophia Training Center, and the Michael Children Home, where there are 4 sub-stores of the ministry. Mr. Speaker, that is forgery and hard run-ins, because the items don't meet to these places, they end up at somebody's shop. As a result,
Imputing a lot, please. Imputing quite a bit.
sorry, sir. As a result, the ministry is in breach of Section 45 of the store regulations. Mr. Speaker, how can all of this happen under one minister's watch in 1 term in office? In this regard, sir, an auditor examination, further, we move from the stores now.
Before you move on, you'll need an extension.
Thank you, Comrade Speaker. I move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude her presentation, hopefully without blackout.
Thank you, honourable member. You may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, permit me to share one more instance of hard run-ins and forgery in this ministry. Let us look at another instance, sir. 56.5 million was allotted to purchase furniture and equipment on the 3 capital programs of the ministry. As of December 2023, the sum was expended. An examination of payment vouchers and other related documents presented for audit revealed that the ministry received the furniture and equipment valuing 42.97 million, not 55.9. The difference is 12.9, could not be verified since the payment vouchers and other supporting documents were not presented for audit examination. Mr. Speaker, that is hard run-ins at the ministry. Mr. Speaker, the minister needs to come up here and tell us where the furniture and the equipment is, because the audit report says that the furniture and the equipment were not in the stores and it could not be verified. This hard running's got to stop, Mr. Speaker. We got to know where the taxpayers' money going. Mr. Speaker, it is clear this minister has failed the people of Guyana. No wonder the staff themselves called for her resignation not so long ago. And so again, I will award her an F grade. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Parag spoke about the APNUFC manifesto this morning. So let me remind her about her PVP manifesto of failed promises just before I close. Mr. Speaker, their manifesto said expand childcare programs and center countrywide and enhance the capacity of childcare and protection agency. Honorable Minister, based on your track record of the center at Mahaika and that failed project where the contractor ran off for the mobilization of almost quarter of the money and did not complete the program, I think that's a failed promise because you can't do one child care center in 4 years. How would you do 9 in 10 months? Failed promise from the PVP. Mr. Speaker, they said that they will mainstream women's participation in governance. We're still waiting on that. Perhaps the minister can tell us about that. Failed promise. They said in their manifesto they will provide enhanced benefits for public assistance recipients. Failed promise. Instead, in Region 10, they knock off almost 50% of the recipients of public assistance from the program. Fail the people of Region 10. Bishop Edgil, Minister Vindya Prasad is failing the people of Region 10. Improve conditions for persons with special needs. Mr. Speaker, this is a failed promise. But let me remind Minister Vindya Prasad of the letter I wrote her. Ms. Leona James from Port Kaitumo behind the airport is begging for the disability grant. Mr. Speaker, I went to that relative's house because Leona doesn't have a house of her own. I took photographs. It was on social media. I wrote the minister almost begging for this indigenous woman to receive her disability grant. Perhaps after this, Leona will get her disability grant. But I know recently another member of the opposition wrote the minister, and the staff called this disabled woman and really was abusive. Mr. Speaker, I want to bring one more matter to bear before I close. Ms. Sarah Brown, honorable member, you're a young professional. You may have a future with the PPP. And I would like to advise you, as when you come to this house, come with facts. I want to refer to a statement you made in your budget speech where you said that the Honorable Ronald Cox don't go out into his constituency. Sarah Brown, honorable member, follow my social media and you will see that when I was in Region 1, Honorable Ronald Cox went with me to Matakai. He was with me in Port Kaituma. He was with me all around for a whole week in Mabaruma. The untruths will not take you anywhere. As a young professional, it would be in your best interest to be truthful when you come to this house. Mr. Speaker, in a minute, I just want to tell.
I've actually given you 3 minutes on the original and 2 minutes on this one.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Speaker. I will not be able to endorse this budget based on all that I have said, the failure and incompetence of this ministry.
Thank you, honorable member. Now for the honorable Minister of